Hey there, it's Andre the Impulsive Thinker. Today I have joining us is Gary Mottershead, who's the founder and president of GCP Industrial Products. And he's also a coach with Strategic Coach, which is, I'm quite familiar with Coach and we talk about it a lot. And he's also the host of the Clarity Generates Confidence podcast. So how are you doing today, Gary?
Awesome, Andre. And I'm so thrilled to be part of this podcast. We've known each other for a while and had lots of conversations. So just to see where we're at with this
Yeah.
and change of pace for me. I'm usually the interviewer instead of being interviewed. So
Wow. All right. Let's get this going. Yeah. September 2011 is when we first met. You are
wow.
my coach at Strategic Coach, the first one to open in my eyes that I'm abusing my time as an entrepreneur. Yeah, so you've been a lifelong coach at Strategic Coach, and I just remember on day one, you always have three thoughts to consider throughout every day, and there's always one that's constantly there. And I'm going to be honest, it created a lot of confusion for me when I first saw it. But clarity generates confidence. And 12 years later, I'm starting to get the hang of it. And I wanted to bring you on to discuss this because how does clarity generate confidence and how is that important to the entrepreneur?
Well, Andre, I don't know how I caught on to it, but I'm glad you've gone back that far because I think I probably used that in my workshops for the last 15 years or so. And I've been coaching, I'm in my 28th year now. So it's, and it somehow you just latch on to things. And just a little background, one of the things I wanted to do for everybody coming into the workshop was to really, what are they going to focus on? Because again, talking about entrepreneurs, you're talking about being the impulsive thinker, people of us who have ADD, ADHD, and so forth. And so what do we got to focus on? So I wanted to give everybody a way to think about and at the beginning of the day, and I leave it up, those thoughts, throughout the day. And the whole idea of clarity generates confidence really came from an analogy that I use that if you're driving a car and you're driving the car in a fog, and let's say even a foggy night in particular, the tendency is to want to pull on the high beams to see farther ahead.
Right.
Well, we all know when we pull the high beams on, we have, with all the water that's in the air, when it's foggy, it just glares right back at us. So like as an individual, if we just apply more energy and more power to something, we really can't go any further and any faster. So I always liked fog lights in the car. It was kind of cool for me. I like that. But I realized that the fog lights do two things. They light up, they're down low. And thought, well, how can you see further if they're down low? They light up the center line and they light up the side of the road sign line. And so now, even in the fog, you actually have greater visibility going forward than if you just turned on high beams and
Yes.
high power.
Mm-hmm.
And so that view to me was really the world of entrepreneurs where we operate in a lot of unknowns. We operate, and if you want to call it the world of a bit of a fog or lack of clarity. And so what can we do to do that? And so I said, let's turn those fog lights on. Let's light up our path so we know when we're off track. We know if we've gone over the center line. We know if we're getting off on the road. We can hear that from the tires, but it just gives us a better sense of it. And I think we can go faster. We can go faster in the vehicle with that, but we can also go faster. And so that's what said to me is that now I'm more confident of the path forward because even I haven't changed the fact that the fog is there. I haven't changed the fact that the confusion's there. But what I have changed is how I look at it and what tools I have to see it.
How you look at it. Because my follow-up question to that was going to be, well, I love that phrase. We operate in a world of unknowns as entrepreneurs, but I don't know what the end result is going to be or what it's going to look like. But when you say how it's going to look, what are you referring to? What clarity do I need? Because if I'm not completely clear, a lot of times I'm not clear on what it's going to look at the end, but I got an idea what I want to do.
Well, and maybe we're crossing purposes on words here. Is that and maybe we'll just start at this point, is that I think it's important for us to have the vision of where we want to go. And so that part's important. So, but we don't really know all the ins and outs of how we're going to get there. At least I've never, I'm the kind of guy that says, I just want to do it all. If I haven't done it and I thought about it, can I start something else? Can I do something else? But I never really know how I'm going to get there. But it's always been driven by a vision of some sort. And one that hopefully communicate to others. What's hard is that, and I liken this is that I always use various analogies. When I had the tire recycling business, Recovery Technologies, and it had never been done before, we're using liquid nitrogen to freeze it, rubber to get it all up. And I said, someone asked, what's this business like? I said, the business is like having a round two-sided jigsaw puzzle with no picture.
Mm-hmm.
How do you put the pieces together? You don't even know which side it is. You don't have a corner. You don't have anything to work from. And so we have to keep going down a path and begin to put pieces together so that we see it. But we still see where we're trying to get to, but we don't clearly know how we're going to get there. And so all we can do, in my view, is not always, but the thing we do is light up as much of the path as we can, go down that path. And the other, hopefully, highway analogy that I'll come up with, it's like when you come to a T on the road and you don't know which way to go, you go one way. Because you start going that direction, you begin to get signs to tell you, oh, you're on the right path or you're not. And if you're not on the right path, you turn around and go back the other way. And I think that's a way that we need as entrepreneurs to go through that, is so we don't get stopped when we get to the T junction in the road. We don't get stopped because we can't see the full path. We still know where we want to get to. We still have the map, and that we'll make the turns. If it's the right turn, great. If it isn't, we turn around and go the other way. And I think that's what I look at when I go through this. So every time we're going to go periods where we don't have clarity, totally. But we always want to default to come back. What do we need to do to bring it back into something that we can understand, be clear about, and have a base of confidence to move forward from?
So it's not necessarily meaning we understand or got clarity on all the steps required to get to the vision. Is it the next step, at least a couple more, or as much as we can figure out?
Absolutely right. I've been a coach a long time, and I really like about the thing we call the 4 C's, and the 4 C's start with, and the 4 C's work like this. It's commitment, courage, capability, and confidence. And you've heard me say in the workshop that when you look at entrepreneurs, you kind of go, wow, these guys are really confident and they got a lot of capability. How do they have that? And I always thought that's what our strength was. Well, the reality is our strength is the willingness to make commitments and go through the courage to have the capability and confidence, because people don't see the commitment and they don't see the courage we had to have. They only see that. And in the workshop not so long ago, actually back a couple just before, you might have been in that workshop. You were actually sitting beside Jeffrey, I think.
Yes.
I don't know if you recall me that day when he says, I just fake it till I make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got quite animated. I said, the energy's a little low, so I got animated. I said, we always friggin' fake it till we make it. Why? Because we make a commitment before we have the capability. Right. And that means we have to go through the courage. And I said, that's the basic definition of how an entrepreneur operates.
And I always found is like the 4 C's is really relevant to when you need to learn or want to learn a new capability. Because once you have that capability, you kind of skip over the commitment and courage because you already have the capability, which that means everyone confuses with, I already have the confidence to do it. Well, because you already did the first part of the circle ahead of time.
Yeah.
So clarity, and not necessarily the whole the whole road path or road, but at least something ahead of time. And what do you recommend how to get clarity, or is there a process that you recommend?
I always, when I don't have the confidence, I'd start to look for wins. How can I have small wins? Mm-hmm. And it may be that people like to go out and do exercise. They go out and have their walks. They go to the gym, whatever it might be, something that builds them back up, something they're good at. I like to talk to people, no surprise. And I like to call people who like me.
Yeah.
and I can have a conversation with them. And so, you take a step, or you go and say, I've been putting this thing off for a while. I've been, we'll call it procrastinating, and I'm going to do it. And I always find out that it takes me longer not to do something than it does to actually go and do it. There's still a little bit of the fear that's there, or that holds me up. Yeah. And when I do those things, it starts to build the confidence back. Because if you look at that 4 C's circle, you have to have confidence before you can make a commitment. And you need to so we always draw from our past, Andre. We always draw from the past and things we've done and go, oh, I've done this before, or I've done something like this before. And what do we got to do? And I'd suggest for each individual is to create their own path, their own confidence path that goes back over their history, because we are the worst critics of ourselves.
Oh, the best. We're the best worst of it. Yeah.
We beat ourselves up so badly that we can't even see what we've accomplished. And because you know what? Your mind's already moved on to the next thing. And why didn't I do that? I mean, why didn't I have a bigger company? Why didn't I make more money? Why didn't I do this? Why did I make that decision? And we totally second guess ourselves. And that is that. And I think you'd probably, that is really destructive behavior, but that we just take for granted. We actually sometimes use it for motivation. So I don't get that, because we hate not to succeed. But what it doesn't in the long run really help you, because you don't, your internal, your view of yourself and how other people view you, there's a disconnect.
Right.
And I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but I'm doing a virtual power up for a strategic coach. And we just decided yesterday that we're going to call it Clarity Generates Confidence. And the first opening question is, are you clear on who you are and how clear you are? Score yourself from 1 to 10. And do other people perceive you the same way? You score yourself from 1 to 10. And we're interested in, is there a disconnect, or is there not even a disconnect? And the answer is why. And so that, to me, is what's really important, that we don't ever see ourselves the way other people see us.
Well, I gotta process that one a little bit, because that's really good. I wish. And you know what? Even with the ADHD world and entrepreneurial, those are really powerful questions. Are you clear on who you are? Which really has caused a lot of missteps on my part, or hesitancy, or going down the wrong path. But that second part of the question, do others perceive you the same way? That's a really interesting question, because now you've got to, if you got a bad perception of yourself, and you're going to try and put yourself in other people's eyes, that's almost like a little more negative rumination here. But to force yourself to see what you're clear on who you are, and get your personal values out there first, I think is very important. And we've all been through the unique ability process with Julia Waller. I know she hates it when we mention her name everywhere, but by understanding what you do best and what you got a lot of passion for, really helps identify. I think it has a lot to do with your core values anyways, exactly who you are.
Well, if you want to take this path a little bit, by the way, when Julie was on my podcast recently, just came out.
Fantastic episode, by the way.
Thank you. And I enjoyed doing it, because I've known her for a long time, and she was wonderful on it, and got a lot of good play with that. So I hope people do listen to it, because it's about what they can do for themselves. But in preparation for this little virtual power up, which is 2 hours, twice here in October, and I said, it was in 2005 when I came to the realization who I was. So if I say to you, Andre, if you ask me who I was, I say, I'm the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Does that resonate with you?
Yes.
Okay. So, but in 2005, 18 years ago now, and I have 2 businesses. One was Spark, which is focus and ignite your energy. So it's all about coaching. And I coached not only a strategic coach, but other companies that got that. And I have GCP Industrial Products, as you mentioned, and with a largest importer of industrial sheet rubber based on recycled materials, which I'd done before, talked about that side of it. But I knew when I was working with my coaching clients, they didn't see me as the industrial products guy and the engineer. I'm a chemical engineer by training. And when I was in that world, the GCP world, what's being a coach? They didn't resonate with that. So I think it was in the fall of 2005, and one of the clients had called me, and kind of joking, she knew all about it. And she said, which persona of Gary am I talking to today? And you know what? She was being funny, because I'm a bit of a jokester. And I didn't laugh, because I said, is that how I'm really being viewed? And so I said, holy crap. I probably said something else, but for public consumption, we'll leave it. That.
Holy shit. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're the host. You could say those things. I'm just the guest. And so I sat back and thought about it. I said, I've got to come because I'm just the one person. Everything's in my head. So we're not really, I'm not schizophrenic or whatever other style. I'm one person. Most of us are that way. We are that person. And so who are we? And so I said, you know what? I'm going to be the coach. I wasn't the coach yet, but I'm going to be the coach. And then I drew an analogy to sports teams. Hockey's a good one. Canadians will talk about hockey. And where's the coach? The coach is on the bench. The coach is not on the ice. The coach is not, the people who were even star players didn't always make the best coaches. And so I looked at it and said, all right, but I always admired Scotty Bowman. He was never the great hockey player.
He was an ultimate
coach.
Yeah.
The
Most
flip
Stanley
side
Cup wins as a coach.
And the flip side, you got a Wayne Gretzky, who's an incredible hockey player, one of the top, couldn't make it the same way as a coach. So I compare those two people only because I can relate to both of them in the way of what they did. And I really admired Scotty Bowman for what he did. And he also worked through several generations of hockey players.
Yes.
As how hockey changed, and he was able to change with it. Why? Because he was the coach.
Yeah.
And he understood that. So, okay, Gary says he's going to be the coach. What does that mean? That meant I had to go through and consciously give up all those things that were not coaching activities in my business.
Yeah.
And so now I had to bring people along. Fortunately, around 2005, I brought on a team of people. Most of them are still with me. If not all of them are still with me. And today they manage those things. And so I learned that I could be the coach because that's who I was. So so contrary to a lot of other entrepreneurs, I retain with Christine, my assistant, the people side of things. Why? Because you coach people. Right.
So you started GCP, correct?
I started. Yeah, I started.
So you built up the company, you developed the clientele, the products, you've developed all that, and now you're just sitting on the bench.
Yeah, on the bench.
And I think that's a very thing for the listeners to realize, that just because you start the company doesn't mean you still have to continually do it all the time and try to find your unique ability like you did.
Well, and that's what happened. So Coach, has been an incredible influence and an incredible value for all of that. And Julie, as we talked about. But it was also, one, you need to have self-awareness, which is something you're really coming to and seeing. You need to be self-aware. And so, and I really thought about, I want the perception of other people and my own perception of myself to be the same. And why is that important? Now there's no disconnect.
Yeah.
And I had a guy come up to me who I haven't seen much at all. We play golf a couple of times every few years, and I was playing with him a couple of times this summer. And he goes, "Oh, here's my coach. It's been 20 years since I told him anything about the game of golf, and I'm not a professional by any means, And he goes, I said, I'm not even that good anymore, Dave. And he goes, you're my coach. Okay, so that was just fun, personal side of things, but just a reconfirmation of how other people would see me.
Right. And that's because you gain clarity on who you are.
That's right.
Right. And I think this little discussion here, I think is very profound for our listeners, because like I speak about this all the time. A lot of us have to play different characters to hide our idiosyncrasies, our uniqueness and differences, depending on what group we're in. And when you said, which Gary am I dealing with today? Right.
Yeah.
Kind of reflects what I start thinking about, different characters for different situations. And then if you get clarity on who you are and be that person consistently, then that means you're the same persona, or everyone perceives you the same way, no matter what the environment is, because you got clarity on who you truly are.
Exactly. And you know how that then translates? Is that's my filter. That's my filter for things that I do.
And so who you do it with.
And my purpose is helping people and organizations grow. If I can't help people grow, it doesn't factor for me. I'll be nice, but it doesn't factor for me. Okay. And so it really allows each one of us, when we do this, you might think it's really limiting, but it's not. It's actually expanding. Because again, what I'll talk about in this little session we're going to have at Strategic Coach, the difference between FOMO and JOMO. So the fear of missing out and the joy of missing out.
Yeah.
So I don't mind. I don't mind missing out on things that I'm not good at anymore. I don't need to do it.
Or ever was.
Well, probably ever was, but thank you for that.
Pull it off.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean to cut at you. It's just, even for me, there's a lot of stuff I thought I was really good at, but I never was, but I was able to pull it off because I needed to.
Well, right. That's correct. Absolutely. But whenever we can come to that point in our lives and say, this is what we're good at. And then I'll also put a little exclamation mark on it. The last 18 years have been the best years in my life. Okay. And from a financial perspective, from a personal perspective, I'm more relaxed. And I can actually be with many different types of people, and whether they've retired now or whether they share the ambitions, because what I'm striving for is important to me. I don't compete with anybody else now. And that was absolutely crucial for me, because all the people I see and all the, high performers that I come in contact with throughout the world that I work with, I had to come to that point, because I didn't want to continue to beat myself up, but I didn't know how, Andre, taking it back. And this became, and I didn't recognize it at the time, by the way. Okay. I didn't recognize it probably till about 8 or 10 years later, how important that was.
Again, that's because of self-awareness, and you were open to self-awareness.
Yeah.
Which generated clarity, which generates what? In the end, confidence to do something a little more challenging or different.
And my goal has always been, can I help bring that to others? That is my motivation. That's what I do. And I think I'm open, honest, and authentic about that. And so that's why I can still coach, still be excited about it, still do these things 28 years later.
Yeah, and I really like the point you made about how we beat ourselves up so badly that it blinds us to our past success. And we got to keep that in our forefront. Or, I even schedule time to kind of look back. I even got a OneNote page that says everything that I've succeeded at. And I got to review it every once in a while to say, oh yeah, I did do that. I did do that. I did do that. And I think that's a good practice for everyone to do. Coach calls that positive focus. Look back, and the guy kind of like the gap in the game concept. If you measure back to now, then you're in the gain. If you're measuring forward to an ideal result, now you're in the gap, because you can never truly achieve it. And I really like the concept of the entrepreneur operates in the world of unknown. Therefore, let's turn on our fog lights so that they're down low, so we can see from a different perspective and not be blinded by the fog in the headlights. And honestly, Gary, I think this is so clearly understanding our next steps and the goals that we're setting helps us build the path and to visualize the results, and generates clarity of the task at hand. Therefore, confident to make the move.
Yeah.
And for the listeners, here's the question for you. I had one written, but this is nothing compared to what my coach, Mr. Gary Mottershead, just asked us. And are you clear on who you are? And then, do others perceive you the same way? And I don't know how to end this. Do you have any final thoughts or recommendations for my listeners, Gary? Because you always got a good one at the end. Every time at a workshop, there's always one more little Gary bomb that goes, oh, I got to keep thinking about this.
Well, here's one. And I didn't know how it worked, but I did that with my team, is I asked them all to look back 10 years and list their accomplishments for 10 years. So we do the positive focus for a year or two or whatever, but going back 10 years, and I got some young ones in their mid-20s, and I wondered how they'd like it. And it was an incredible little exercise. And I suggest that for everybody. Don't go back just a year, go back 10 years.
Yeah.
Because and particularly for entrepreneurs, the old expression is entrepreneurs don't have unrealistic goals, but unrealistic timeframes.
Yeah.
And we can accomplish more we don't accomplish as much as we thought in 1 year, but we can accomplish far more than we thought we could in 10 years. So if we all go back and have a check on that, and that is a huge, huge confidence builder. And it got played back to me, Ashley, who's just with us now 9 months, and in her 20s, never had the kind of open exposure to kind of company we are, never been exposed to Coach and Colby's and all those things before. After we did our team meeting in early September, she went back and asked her friends the same 10-year question. And she was excited. She was excited to do so, and they were excited to answer it. So you asked for one last piece is say, don't be afraid to go and say, hey, what have I really done in the last 10 years? And really get a sense of that, because that breadth of time actually builds it builds a lot of clarity, but also generates that confidence that you've done an awful lot when we view ourselves maybe minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, or week to week, just to see it in a much broader perspective.
And that gives us courage to learn the opportunity to learn a new capability, therefore to gain the confidence.
Absolutely.
So
That's it.
Thank you very much, Gary, for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure, Andre. And I know we're going to repeat the pleasure. I'm going to have you on the podcast coming up shortly, so it'll be great. So we'll have a different perspective from
Yeah,
the two
we
of us.
will. And then I'm also going to put link up your episode with Julia about the unique ability in the
Please do
show
that.
notes. And as well, I'm going to hook up the 4Cs model from Strategic Coach in the as a download in the show notes, so that people are having a little more clarity on what we're talking about. And as usual, you never cease to amaze me, always forcing me to think.
Well, you know what my purpose is. So if I can do that, that's awesome.
Well, that's why I keep coming back and paying more. But that's good.
Well, and I said to my brother-in-law, who has been retired for a few years, I said, you know what, as long as I'm valuable and as long as I'm bringing value to other people and they continue to pay me, I'll show up. So
yes. And for the listeners, if you want to do good, I know you guys are wanting to do a good job. You bring value. We just need to prove it to ourselves that we're valuable to others. It's a tough stepping stone to get there, but ultimately we will get there where we value ourselves, because there's a lot of people out there that value us. So thanks again for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
thank you, Andre.